We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday.
It is indeed a pleasure for me to give you the official welcome to the annual Martin Luther King Legacy Ceremony. I'm here today to tell you you have a job. That job with it carries no paycheck, carries no benefits, and it carries no vacation. Your job is to continue the work of Dr. King and do it without violence, do it with compassion, love, and courage. That was his way. It included doing away with hate, segregation, injustice, and discrimination. It will require change. There's still work to be done. So let's celebrate the program and the progress made by celebrating Dr. King's legacy. Thank you for being here. See you next year. Now it's my privilege and honor to present the MC for this evening, David Crabtree from WRL. Thank you, David.
Mayor, thank you, and good afternoon to everyone here. We were backstage talking just a moment ago and introducing ourselves to one another, and I mentioned what a privilege it was to be here today, and that can be for some people an overused word, but I say it with humility to you as I look out over this crowd today, realizing that each of you represent individual lives, each of you created in the image of God, each of you here making up this community. You humble me with your invitation, and I'm proud to be a part of this. We have quite an afternoon lined up for you. And the first person you're going to hear from this afternoon has been a part of public life for a couple of decades. I was with him just this past Thursday evening to hear him speak about some of the challenges in Washington today, and I introduced him then as I will introduce him now. This long-serving member of the United States House of Representatives wants to work, does work, and he does so with a heart. Would you welcome United States Congressman David Price.
Thank you, David. Thank you, David. Thank you, and good afternoon. It's my privilege to be here today to be part of this community observance and to be part of the team welcoming you as we await Reverend Tyson's message and are in the midst of this weekend where we remember, but we also rededicate ourselves. This is a special Martin Luther King observance in North Carolina. As the state employees celebration on Friday noted and featured, this is the 100th anniversary of the birth of John Hope Franklin, one of our most distinguished citizens and the historian of the civil rights movement. And it's the 50th anniversary of the March in Selma, Bloody Sunday, from which my congressional colleague John Lewis barely escaped with his life. And it was that march that led to the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So every year, and especially this year, our memory is sharpened, our gratitude is heightened for those towering figures, but also for the thousands of men and women who put themselves on the line, who marched, who integrated the lunch counters, who did whatever they could do to make the dream of this country from its inception to make it real for all Americans. So we do remember. And I have to say, the act of remembering does and should put us on heightened alert as to the tasks that remain in our own day. The distance we have yet to go, but also the threats that we see to the progress we've already made. That does bring us, I think, to the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and the threat that we face, that some of those expanded ways of encouraging the vote, of getting folks registered, getting them to the polls, making sure everyone exercises the franchise. Some of those are under threat, as everyone in this state knows. And as we look at other areas, we need to be on heightened alert. Make sure that our law enforcement and judicial systems around this country serve all of our people, protect all of our people equally. And then finally, remembering that Dr. King's ministry, as it advanced, more and more focused on questions of poverty and economic inequality. And here, too, we need to recognize we're in danger of losing ground. We need to expand health care, health insurance to all of our people. We need to make sure that we keep that safety net in place for people who are down on their luck and who need some support in sustaining their families. So, heightened alert indeed. We have a lot of work to do. We pause to remember. But remembering thrusts us back into the fight. In Washington, in Raleigh, wherever we are, wherever the ideals that we profess as Americans and as people of conscience and commitment and faith are on the line. So thank you for that commitment. Thank you for this observance here today.
Congressman Price, thank you. As one of the things the Congressman mentioned in the remembrance of what Martin Luther King Jr. preached, what he wanted, what he fought, and ultimately what he died for, was often centered around education. And with that in mind, our next speaker will let us know about the recipient of the Martin Luther King Scholarship for 2014. Would you welcome Minister Cindy Faison. Cindy?
Good afternoon. The purpose of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration Committee Scholarship through the Garner Educational Foundation is to honor, celebrate, and continue the legacy of Dr. King's great love and belief in young people. On behalf of the Martin Luther King Jr. Committee, it is my distinct privilege and pleasure to award the annual $1,000 scholarship to a graduate of Garner Magnet High School. Alexis Gentilesio is now a freshman at North Carolina State University. With the same love and belief as Dr. King and our young people, we are thankful to pass on Dr. King's legacy in the form of this scholarship. And for what I understand, she's not here right now, but if you would join me in congratulating her by an applause, she would definitely appreciate it. Thank you.
Cindy, thank you. Our next speaker, and Congressman Price, I'm not saying she's going to run against you anytime soon, but she is the president of the Student Government Association of Garner Magnet High School. Make welcome Kirby Jones. Kirby?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kirby Jones, and I serve as the student body president at Garner Magnet High School. It is such a privilege to be with you all today to reflect on the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. As student body president, I am blessed with the opportunity to work with young people of a diverse array of racial, religious, and cultural backgrounds. As may not have been the case just a few short decades ago, students who look, think, and believe differently can sit next to one another in English classes to discuss the themes of one of Dr. King's many great speeches. We can work together on student council events to build a school environment that is more inclusive of everyone. We can allow ourselves to be woven together in choral performances with a common thread of music that reflects Dr. King's ideals of love, hope, and perseverance. I see divine potential in each one of my peers. I see a thirst for justice and a hunger for equality. I firmly believe that this is where Dr. King's legacy begins. But is it where it ends? I certainly hope not. I think that one of the greatest testaments to the work of Dr. King comes from the message of empowerment that his work sends to young people everywhere. We live in a world where too often we are told that our age should inhibit us from taking a stand on meaningful issues, or that we simply don't have the knowledge or experience needed to make a difference. However, this is completely contradictory to the life and legacy of Dr. King. In fact, youth participation was a critical element of the famous March to Birmingham in the spring of 1963. The sheer spectacle of youth offering up everything they had, in some cases risking their own lives, compelled many business owners to integrate their establishments, thus opening the door for racial cooperation in a city where hatred and discrimination were rampant. I believe that my peers and I have the same capacity to enact positive change on our campus and elsewhere. Yes, today's youth are plagued by a number of daunting issues, such as bullying and social isolation, substance abuse, school violence, suicide, and many, many more. As our generation approaches the cusp of adulthood, we also face a plethora of national and global problems like poverty, warfare, healthcare disparity, and other crippling inequalities. These struggles may seem far too ponderous for a generation that is often unfairly characterized by its sense of materialism and entitlement. The message of Dr. King says that we're better than that. We're stronger than the low expectations that have been set out before us. We have within ourselves the fortitude to choose the excellent way of love over the more commonly trodden thoroughfare of apathy. We have the capacity to embrace our differences while using these differences to make our shared vision for a brighter future a reality. We have the fervent faith in equal opportunity, regardless of our past failures or current circumstances. Our efforts and our zeal are bolstered by the words of Dr. King, who wisely said that human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. Every step towards the goal of justice requires suffering, sacrifice, and struggle, the tireless exertions and passionate concerns of dedicated individuals, but who also reminded us that we must accept finite disappointment while never losing infinite hope. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. saw the inherent value and infinite hope of every human being. I see this infinite hope on Friday nights in Trojan Stadium, where students of all walks of life come together as one team with one goal. I see it in my theory of knowledge class, when my peers and I sit around a table to have thoughtful discourse on perplexing issues of racial tension and intolerance. I see it in myself when I put aside my intense fear of public speaking, or really public anything, to say a few things that I think need to be said. As I look out into this crowd today, I see it in each of you. But do you see it in yourself? Will you allow your love for your brother to be greater than your fear of what you might not understand about him? Will you allow your divine potential to exceed the expectations that other people have put out for you, maybe the expectations you've put out for yourself? Will you allow Dr. King's vision to permeate your each and every human interaction? What will you do with your infinite hope? As in the days of Dr. King, the need is urgent, but the possibilities are endless, and I can't wait to see where they take us. Thank you.
Wow, Kirby, thank you. As students from Creech Road Elementary make their way up, because they're going to entertain us with some musical selections here, just a couple of things that are already coming to mind as we are gathered. I was listening to what Kirby had to say, all that she had written. You come on in. And thinking that how each of you have taken it upon yourself to gather this afternoon with intention of being here to listen, to learn, to love. You could be home watching football. You could be home doing any number of things. And you made the conscious choice that this is where you wanted to be. To listen to so many people talk about liberty and justice and freedom and equality for all. And I hope as the course of this afternoon goes on, we begin to understand that that definition varies from time to time with each of us when we're the age of these children to the age as some of us are now who have lived through so much of this. So I give you now the Creech Road Elementary School students. Thank you, students, for being here. Thank you.
Sing about peace.
Sing about peace.
All around the world.
All around the world.
Sing about Martin.
Sing about Martin.
Sing about loving.
Sing about loving.
Sing about peace.
Sing about peace.
All around the world.
All around the world.
Sing about Martin.
Sing about Martin.
Sing about caring.
Sing about caring.
Sing about peace.
Sing about peace.
All around the world.
All around the world.
Sing about Martin.
Sing about Martin.
Sing about loving.
Sing about loving.
Sing about peace.
Sing about peace.
All around the world.
All around the world.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Donovan Summers, and it's a wonderful privilege to be here this evening. The title of my presentation is Code of Conduct. You better watch your mouth. I want to start off by telling you a story. Is that all right? One day, my mom and I were sitting in the living room watching a movie. In the story, a little boy, about my age, was laying on his bed playing video games. His mother came in the room and said, "Billy, I need for you to clean your room and empty the trash, please." He jumped up, kicked the trash can, and said, "Come on, Mom, can't you see I'm busy? Why don't you clean it up yourself?" Mm-hmm. But my mom started staring at me like I said it. I tried to look away. I started sweating. Then I messed up. I looked at her. And she said, "I wish you would. I'd jack you up." Then she said, "Freedom of expression. Not up in here, you don't. Y'all kids need to learn how to watch your mouth." Then my dad had to add his 2 cents in. He still think he Eddie Murphy talking about, "It's my house." You know what it is? And if you don't like it, y'all know the rest. My parents, I turned that movie off. I love my parents. How many of y'all remember these TV shows? Leaving the Beaver, Beverly Hillbillies, Green Acres, The Brady Bunch, Gomer Pyle, and my favorite, Good Times. Remember those shows? Because if you do, I ain't gonna call you old. Because I'm trying to watch my mouth. But a lot of people wish that we could go back to those days with no adult situations or profanity on TV. You never saw Gomer Pyle sagging his jeans. You never saw Ellie Mae clap it swinging from a pole. You never saw the Brady Bunch talking about they got swag. And oftentimes,
we hear our parents calling us the lost generation. They say we're more ungrateful, disrespectful, and undisciplined. We don't value our own self-worth. Back in the day, they had prayer in the schools, and people in your neighborhood could whip your behind. Even the principal could light you up. Now in this social media generation, we have folks on Instagram and Twitter cussing and fighting each other out. All this stuff about words can't hurt nobody. No, you can humiliate, you can offend, you can insult, you can cause hate. I mean, you see, it's easy to sit behind a keyboard and talk smack when really you can say whatever without being disrespectful. How many times have you heard your mother or teacher say, you know, sometimes you really should think before you speak? Or how about this one? Sometimes it's not what you say, but it's how you say it. Oh, you know, you can get kicked out of school or lose your job over some lame comment that you put out there online. It's because you don't know the code of conduct. Sometimes you need to watch your mouth. And that's me included. Haven't you said something that you wish you could take back? I have. And God gave us the code of conduct in John 13:34 when he commanded us to love one another. But the great Dr. Martin Luther King, he showed us how to use the code. But for some reason, we haven't been paying attention. He said, I think we got to learn to disagree without violently being disagreeable. You see, what this country had was a runaway racism problem. And when the country wasn't prepared to hear the truth, he spoke about it, marched about it, and died about it. And I'll tell you one thing he was not disrespectful. You never saw him belittle anyone. His words was uplifting. He led by example, and he showed us, like India Irie says in her song, strength, courage, and wisdom. So let's stop tearing each other down, follow his lead, and love one another, respect one another, follow the code of conduct, and watch your mouth. We can do it. It won't happen overnight. Dr. King once said, just take the first step in faith. You don't have to see the whole staircase. Just take the first step. My name is Donovan Summers, and I'm 11 years old. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you. Thank you.
Donovan, I hope you could see everybody standing there. You know, when I saw on the program that I was following Donovan, I thought, great. I've heard him speak at the Martin Luther King Triangle Interfaith Breakfasts before. I've introduced him many times on news clips, on our newscast, but I wasn't sure what we were in for. Thank you for that, Donovan. Yes, a sixth grader. You are already leading, young man. You are already leading. And so I hope you realize the mantle that is already on your shoulders. But we will help you keep it there. So thank you. Thank you. Wow. I stand here before you in many ways a minority in this room, which is a good thing. I'm a native Southerner. I grew up just outside of Nashville, Tennessee. I saw the Freedom Riders come through town. I did not live in a home that embraced that. I've had to come to grips with that over the course of my life. Congressman Price mentioned this would have been the 100th birthday of John Hope Franklin, who, thanks be to God, became a friend to me about 15 years ago and squared my shoulders and began to help me understand that being born white and male in 1949 allowed me to begin the game of life light years ahead of the rest of the world, including my sister. Prophetic words come when we least expect them. That's why prophets are who they are. The prophets of old, even Isaiah, people thought he was a kook, right, Dr. Tyson?
Absolutely.
He's thinking ahead to what he's going to say. He's not listening to me.
I'm thinking about Donald.
People thought Isaiah was a kook. There were other prophets of his time. People loved what they had to say because they said what people wanted to hear. We can't remember their names, but we remember Isaiah. So I stand here today with this message regarding the impact of whether or not or how Dr. King is relevant today. We can talk forever about liberty and justice for all, as we say, as we pledge allegiance to a flag. We can talk about equality, but as I mentioned earlier, each of us will define that differently. We bring our own life experiences to those definitions. So we have to be open and we have to listen. What I've learned about Dr. King is that he was not afraid to take a stand, no matter what the stand was, even in the face of people who supported him, who disagreed. As Donovan mentioned, it was about taking the stand, not always seeing the fruits of your labor. There's that great passage at the end of the Gospel of John that talks about the woman caught in adultery. And we know the story. A group of men, all men, find this person and become police, judge, indicters, and jury. And we're about to become executioners. Because you see, for that crime, the punishment was capital. You're going to die. And you're going to die right here. There's no call to an attorney. There's no search and seizure law. There's no Miranda rights. We men are going to decide what happens. So they challenged Jesus. Well, what about this, Rabbi? We know that story of how he knelt down and wrote in the sand. I've often wondered, in my own cynicism at times, what he wrote. Maybe the names of women these other men had been with. We don't know. But we do know the story ends by this rabbi taking a stand and being listened to. It's one of the few times in Scripture we know about Jesus taking a stand and how it ended. What we don't know is how many times he took a stand that we have no idea what happened. When Dr. King, during his sermon in 1967, a year before he was killed, took a stand against the Vietnam War, he made the statement that morning, very early in that sermon, that he agreed with Dante. And I'm paraphrasing now when I say, if you know something is wrong and you do nothing to stop it or to right it, that there is a special place in hell. Because betrayal is the worst. Once he took that stand, he received no more phone calls from the White House. He received no more invitations for tea in the Rose Garden or the Oval Office. Even members of the movement said, "You will destroy what we are doing. You must stop." And Dr. King said, "I don't care what they say. I don't care what they do. I have to do this." And in doing so, a year before he died, planted the seed that turned public opinion on war and killing in Southeast Asia. He never lived to see that, but he took the stand that led to it. So is he relevant today? He is relevant in everything we do today. Because whether you are taking a stand, Congressman Price, on the floor of the House of Representatives, whether you are taking a stand, Donovan, in your 6th grade class, Mayor, whether you are taking a stand politically in this town, the police chief is here today, whether he takes a stand with his fellow officers in the community, everyone in this room, when I take a stand editorially, when you take a stand in your home, in your workplace, I don't care if you're plumbers, if you're carpenters, if you're teachers, if you're doctors, accountants, attorneys, it matters not. What matters is that you take a stand for what you believe and that you are willing to live into it. That's the message that was taught up until 47 years ago by this young pastor who lost his life at age 39, that has taken some of us far too many years to understand. As we remember, and yes, it is crystallized at this time of year, every year, but may that crystallization this year stay with us as we plant seeds that we may never see the results. "I may not get there with you," he said the night before he was killed. Prophetic, we don't know. You may not get there to see the good that you have begun, but it will never happen if you don't begin it. May we begin and never stop taking those steps. Thank you. Savannah, Kevin, more wonderful music coming your way.
How's everyone doing? Awesome. All right. Well, I just got to say, I've spent many a night, many a rehearsal on this stage in many different costumes, singing many different songs, but I've got to say, on this day, in this particular setting, it's got to be the most special time that I've been here. So I just wanted to thank you for that. The first song we're going to sing for you, We Are the World. So if you know it, please join in. There comes a time when we hear a certain call, when the world must come together as one.
There are people dying. Oh, it's time to lend a hand
to life, the greatest gift of all. We can't go on pretending day by day that someone somewhere will soon make a change.
We are all a part of God's great big family, and the truth, you know, love is all we need.
We are the world, we are the children, we are the ones who make a brighter day, so let's start giving. There's a choice we're making, we're saving our own lives. It's true, we'll make a better day, just you and me. stronger and free.
As God has shown us by turning stone to bread, and so we all must lend a helping hand.
We are the world, we are the children, we are the ones who make a brighter day, so let's start giving. There's a choice we're making, we're saving our own lives. It's true, we'll make a better day, just you and me.
When you're down and out, there seems no hope at all. And if you just believe, there's no way we can fall.
Well, let's realize, oh, that a change can only come when we stand together as one. We are the world, we are the children, we are the ones who make a brighter day, so let's start giving. There's a choice we're making, we're saving our own lives. It's true, we make a better day, just you and me.
We are the world,
We are the children, we are the ones who make a brighter day, so let's start giving. There's a choice we're making, we're saving our own lives. It's true, we'll make a better day, just you and me. It's true, we'll make a better day, just you and me. All right, so the next song we're going to sing was made popular by James Taylor, so I encourage you, in the midst of the song, listen to the lyrics, because that's really what's important. It's not me, it's not my dad, it's not the song, it's the lyrics, it's the meaning of the music. So I encourage you to just listen to that. It's called Shed a Little Light. Oh, let us turn our thoughts today to Martin Luther King, and recognize that there are ties between us, all men and women living on the earth, ties of hope and love, sister and brotherhood, that we are bound together in our desire to see the world become a place in which our children can grow free and strong. And we are bound together by the task that stands before us and the road that lies ahead. We are bound, we are bound.
there is a feeling like the clenching of a fist.
There is a hunger in the center of the chest.
There is a passage through the darkness and the mist.
And though the body sleeps, the heart will never rest. Shed a little light, oh
Shed a little
Lord,
light, oh Lord,
so that we can see just a little light, oh Lord.
just a little light, oh Lord.
Wanna stand it on up,
Stand it on up,
stand it on up, oh Lord.
stand on up.
Wanna walk it on down, shed a little light, oh Lord. Can't get no light from a dollar bill. Don't give me no light from a TV screen. When I open my eyes, I wanna drink my fill from the well on the hill. Just a little light, oh
just a little
Lord.
light, oh Lord.
Wanna stand it on up,
Stand it on up,
stand it on up, oh Lord.
stand on up.
Wanna walk it on down, shed a little light, oh Lord. Shed a little light.
There is a feeling like the clenching of a fist.
There is a hunger in the center of the chest.
There is a passage through the darkness and the mist.
And though the body sleeps, the heart will never rest. Oh, let us turn our thoughts today to Martin Luther King and recognize that there are ties between us,
Oh,
men and women, living on the earth, ties of hope and love, sister and brotherhood. Thank you.
Good afternoon. You're a beautiful audience today. Give yourselves a hand. It is an honor as well as a privilege to come before you to dramatize a speech and theory of a great man, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I have a dream. So I go back to the South, not in despair. I go back to the South, not with the feeling we are caught in a dark dungeon, which would never lead to a way out. I go back believing that the new day is coming. So this afternoon, I have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day the state of Alabama, whose governor lips are presently dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, will be transformed into a situation where the little black girls and boys will be able to join hands with the little white girls and boys and walk together as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain will be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith which I return to the South. With this faith, we will be able to hew out the mountain of despair, a stone of hope. With this faith, we'll be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we'll be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we'll be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning. My country, tills of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America's to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the Calvacious peaks of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. When we let freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we'll be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black man and white man, Jews and Gentiles, Protestant Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing the words of that old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Thank y'all.
Elmo told me I could borrow part of his time. I have decided if I'm ever going to get anything done at Town Hall again, I better recognize my council members. Mayor Pro Tem Ken Marshburn, would you stand? Councilwoman Kathy Barringer. Councilmember Jackie Johns. Councilmember Grace Singleton. Councilmember Buck Kennedy. Anyone else would like to be recognized, please do it now. All right, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I come with great pleasure to present the Dream in Action Award. Mary Yarborough is our 2015 Dream in Action Award recipient. Miss Mary Yarborough spent her high school years at Du Bois High School in Wake Forest, North Carolina. She went on to attend North Carolina Central University to receive her Bachelor of Science degree in Business Education in 1965. She later completed 33 hours of graduate studies in public administration. She was inspired to become a teacher by her business ed teacher, the late Marilyn Skinner, and English teacher Hazel Logan. These were great role models in her life. After her second year of teaching in Wake County, she received a job in Garner, North Carolina, where she spent 34 of her 40 years of teaching the youth in Wake County. Ms. Yarborough was known at Garner Senior High to be an excellent typing teacher and a strong disciplinarian. Who believed that every child could learn to type. She was nominated by her peers and received the Teacher of the Year award twice during her career at Garner Senior High. She was very active working outside the classroom as senior class advisor, senior service club advisor, Business Department, the chairperson, along with other projects and committee activities. At least 15 of the 34 years spent at Garner Senior, she was the Alternative Programs Coordinator, whose major job was to work with the discipline at Garner Senior High. She was labeled many names by the students. The Hawk was the most frequent. Students respected her, and she loved them and respected them and wanted them all to do their best and be someone that they would be proud of later in life. After retiring in Garner, she spent 6 years working in discipline in several schools in Wake County, primarily East Garner Middle School, East Garner Wake High School, and Middle Creek High School. She states that she would love to be in the hallways helping our young people. She also states that she seldom leaves home without bumping into someone who remembers her from the schools where she worked. She states that they frequently comment about how much influence she had on them while they were in school. Currently, Ms. Yarborough is a member of the Board of Directors in the National Du Bois High School Alumni Association, member of the Raleigh Prestige Club, a member of the North Carolina Association of Educators, a member of Sisters to Sisters Club of Raleigh, and a member of the Poole Road State Employees Credit Union Advisory Board. She loves attending her church, Springfield Baptist Church on Auburn-Knightdale Road. Her pastor, Reverend Daniel Sanders, is also a graduate of Garner Senior High School. Even now, with a busy schedule that includes spending as much time as possible with her only grandchild, little Erica, Ms. Yarborough finds time for a hobby: canning, making jellies, making jams, relishes, and good old country soup, and she shares these goodies with friends and families. She states that she still has one last dream, that she wants to concentrate on helping our youth to realize their dreams in the future. She wants to establish a group of 200 young people in Wake County, 100 young men and 100 young women from grades 9 through 12, and expose them to workshops that will be focused on spiritual guidance, getting a good education, and developing good moral character. She feels that there is so much more that need to hear that is not mentioned in the classroom for the lack of time. Teachers having to stick to curriculum, and the teacher's fear of mentioning and discussing certain topics in the classroom. She asks your prayers that God will strengthen her to work on this dream. I ask you all now to give a warm welcome to Ms. Yarborough.
Good evening to everyone. Takes a moment to get together after that introduction. First of all, I would like to say thank you to the Dr. Martin Luther King Celebration Committee. Thank you very much for your kindness and consideration in selecting me to receive this award. When I was called and told that I was chosen, the first thought that came to my mind was, why me? I thought about it for a few days, and then I said, Dr. King, we will be celebrating a legacy of a man who had a dream to help his people who were long suffering for racial equality. he decided to go forth and pursue his dream using all the strength that he had and was blessed with. He was determined to reach the mountaintop using all the resources and help he could get. I believe that Dr. King's ultimate mission was to serve God with all his heart and to hold others to do the same. His love, his courage, his intelligence, his kindness, his patience, his determination, his discipline, his integrity, and his compassion helped him to climb to the top of that mountain and break it down that segregated the walls of all of God's people in these United States. He broke that wall down. It is with this same motivation and spirit that I humbly accept this award today. I had great role models who set the bar high for me in my family. My grandparents emphasized and they also enforced strong discipline in my family. You didn't lay in the bed and not go to school. You didn't work when you wanted to at home. You worked on the farm. You worked on other people's farms. And you helped in the kitchen. You learned how to can and do other things. And you also went to church. I love my grandparents for what they did for me. I have often said, if it had not been for my grandfather saying, leave that pretty little child here, I will take care of her, I don't know where I'd be today. And I'm sure some of you have stories. Two of my teachers in school, I loved them because I knew they were good teachers. They loved children, and they were strict. Dr. King was a role model for all of us in the early 60s. We were all struggling under the umbrella of a segregated society. I had just graduated from college shortly after the death of Dr. King. His death made me want to prove myself worthy. And when I entered into a teaching segregated school system, I had a dream to be the best typing teacher anywhere. I wanted to be the best disciplinarian in handling students in the classroom. And Garner Senior High School, when they found out Mary Yarber could do it, they used me. I can remember once being singled out as teaching the largest number of students in the school during a given year. And of course, the district director came by and he said, you've got to take some of these children out of her class. She's got too many. They didn't want to go. I'm going to go offline for just a second and say to you that the in-school suspension program really developed out of Garner Senior High School. Mary Yarber established strict rules. You didn't come and sleep and eat, and you didn't get out until that schoolwork was done. And you didn't sass and cuss while you were there. You had to work. There was no fooling around in-school suspension. Teachers enjoyed sending those misbehaviors to me. Surely I had some hurdles to overcome, but my goal was to stay on course and to do as I felt God wanted me to do, because I was one of those who believed in God, in Jesus Christ, when I was very young. I had good role models. My grandfather, who could not read and write, sat in the amen corner and led the songs. My grandfather was one of those who also could quote you passages from the Bible, and he couldn't read. Well, how did he do it? My grandmother was one of those at an early age, 9, 10 years old, who was given the responsibility to teach her sisters and brothers and other students when there was no teacher. She learned very well. And she would read to my grandfather, who had a good photostatic memory. And he could quote those passages and talk to you about the Bible. On Sunday afternoon after church, there would be anywhere from 8 to 10 people sitting in our house talking about the Bible. That's where the strict discipline came from. We're not doing that these days. And our children are going astray. And we want to make sure they have so many material things when they get older, like land and cars and what have you. But we're not preparing them for God. We are not doing that. My dream is to grab a hold to a few, use them as role models to get them on the right track, and then move as far as I can go. I've had that dream for a long time. And now that the mayor has used me for 2 years on this program, in whatever fashion he saw fit, I think he's pulling me out of the corner to get busy. Many of my students went on to use their typing skills in the working world. Some at the State Department. A lot of people tell me about the kids at the State Department Ms. Yarborough had. When I hear these comments today, such as, "What you taught me has been my career," or "I would not be where I am today if it were not for you," or "I am an author of several books and I think of you often while I am typing, because if it had not been for you being strict with me in learning to type well, I would not be where I am today." Or, "If you had not been strict and hard on me in making me behave, I would not be where I am today." I knew that learning this skill, along with good, sound discipline, would be great tools to help them to be successful in life. I know of no other skill that is used so frequently in today's world. From babies to grandparents, everyone is on the typing pads and tablets. Everyone. Unfortunately, some are doing it the hard way, pecking here and there, because they do not have me as their teacher drilling them and learning to type without looking at the keys. I could elaborate on lots of things that happened during my 40 years of teaching, but time does not permit me to do that. I want to emphasize that I'm still dreaming. I'm sure we all are. Let's help and encourage each other to reach the mountaintop. And again, I am so happy that you recognized me today for my efforts. Thank you to all of you. Thanks for coming. And may God continue to bless you.
Thank you. Thank you. Miss Mary, thank you, and thank you for your dream. May you continue to dream it. I bet you don't like spell check either, do you? She didn't even answer. I think that's the answer right there. All right, we're in for a treat now with the Die Meister Singers of Garnet Magnet High School under the direction of Leah Godfrey. You ready? Come on out. Make them welcome.
Good afternoon. What a fantastic celebration this has been today. I promise I won't talk too long, but I did want to introduce this great group that's coming up behind me now. This is the Garner Magnet High School DeMeister Singers. That's a very fancy way to say that this group is all audition students. They're juniors and seniors, very talented, and we're excited to share with you today 2 sacred texts that we've been working on for the last 6 months that we thought would hopefully be honorable and fitting today. So we're very excited. Thank you, Kelly, for bringing my stool as I struggle with height. I did want to tell you just very briefly a quote that was already mentioned today by Donovan Summers, who is awesome, that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Wrote. And I saw it this morning, actually, and I wanted to share it with my students as well. When I was at church this morning, I saw it listed in my bulletin, the quote about faith being something that makes you take a step, even if you can't see the entire staircase. I was very moved by that. It made me think immediately of these young people behind me, because specifically as an artist, what that means for us is that every day we have the luxury and we have the task at hand to make sure that we are holding one another up, building each other up, holding each other accountable, really enjoying and celebrating one another's differences, and making something happen that is beautiful and bigger than any one of us singly. And I think that's something that these students do very well, so I'm really proud of them. We sincerely hope that you enjoy our performance today. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. As a young pastor, the Reverend Vernon Tyson decided that he wanted to be God's man. Born the same year, 1929, as the man we honor today, Martin Luther King Jr., Vernon Tyson was among the generation of Southern pastors who had the issue of race literally dropped in their laps. Most swept it off their laps, like after-dinner crumbs. Vernon Tyson did not. Vernon Tyson knew right away the ramifications and the consequences of his decision to be God's man. I didn't know how to escape the issue of race and be a Christian minister, Vernon told me. Said Dr. King, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Vernon Tyson knew that God's man could not be silent about the oppression of African Americans in the South. Vernon Tyson knew that segregation was an evil institution that had to be opposed and stopped. Vernon Tyson knew that his black sisters and brothers were just like him, made in the image and likeness of a loving God. Vernon Tyson knew that God's man had to speak the truth to white folks who wanted to maintain the status quo, that being second-class status for people of color. Vernon Tyson knew that God's man had to say no to the separate and unequal policies of racism. Vernon Tyson knew that God's man had to speak out with moral authority in the face of ignorance and hatred. In 1958, Vernon Tyson was God's man when he joined other Raleigh pastors in signing an ad in the Raleigh News and Observer, urging local merchants to open their doors to African Americans. Vernon Tyson was God's man when he attended in 1970 the funeral of Henry Morrow, an African American Vietnam veteran who was gunned down on the street in Oxford, North Carolina, by white racists. God's man, a peacemaker, had to be there in that church to honor the dead. God's man, Vernon Tyson, knew that injustice anywhere was a threat to justice everywhere. Vernon Tyson had the good fortune of attending Greensboro's Guilford College as an undergraduate, where he learned to, quote, swim against the current with the Quakers, many of whom embraced Christian pacifism. Like Martin Luther King, Vernon Tyson came to embrace nonviolence as the will of God. Rather than follow the warriors to the battlefields of Korea, Vernon Tyson had to follow the Prince of Peace. He rejected war and violence as a conscientious objector, a decision that didn't sit well with his own family. On April 4th, 1968, Vernon Tyson, God's man, stuck his neck out again. Following the murder of Dr. King, Vernon Tyson agreed to host an ecumenical interracial memorial service for Martin Luther King at his church in Oxford. Following that decision, Vernon Tyson was paid a visit by an angry group of men from his own congregation who wanted Tyson to cancel that service. Vernon Tyson, God's man, stood his ground. One of his own congregants said to him, "I think Martin Luther King is the worst enemy America's had in my lifetime. I know the preacher doesn't agree with that, but that's how I feel, and that's how you all feel." But I want to say something. Preacher, if anybody around here knocks you down, I'm going to pick you up. That's grace, Vernon Tyson told me. Vernon Tyson and Martha Bowie Tyson had 4 children. Son Tim Tyson authored the book, also a major motion picture, Blood Done Sign My Name, which told the story of Vernon's commitment to being God's man. Tim Tyson said to me, "In our family, if you didn't take a stand, you weren't much of a man or much of a preacher." The race question was the acid test of integrity. This afternoon, I am honored to introduce to you the person who passed the acid test of integrity, God's man, the Reverend Dr. Vernon Tyson.
I'm going to put my watch down so you don't have to look at your watch. And I'll do the best I can about that. One day I received a letter. It was a printed circular as personal as a box holder. So I started to pitch it. And then I noticed the title, Letter from Birmingham Jail. Well, for years I'd been reading jail letters, Philippians, Ephesians, Colossians, Philemon, all written by a certain first-century preacher. And here came this Birmingham jail letter, written by a certain 20th century preacher. So I sat down to read it. It wasn't long before I came to the middle of the 6th page, and there I thought I saw my name. It was as if the writer was saying, "Vernon Tyson, you are my worst enemy. Not the Ku Klux Klanners, not the white citizens counselors, but you white moderates who love order more than you love justice." Well, I did love order, but it was there that I slipped out of my chair onto my knees. And so here I am, 60 years later, standing before God and you, my assembled neighbors, invited to speak some words that honors the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. And so I now ask you, what words? What words need to be spoken here today? Indeed, what words beg to be heard here today before we leave this place? For one thing, I need to tell you that I knew Brother Martin, though I never laid eyes on him except on the television, David. And yet I knew him. We were born the same year. We were sons of strong Southern preachers. In college and seminary, we read the same books. Reinhold Niebuhr, Karl Barth. We could both quote Paul Tillich, though it seemed to me that Dr. King understood Paul Tillich. And so I have lost my page, and so I've got to look at what I have written down. I say there are two things that need to be said here today. One was that I knew him. Another was that things have changed since last January. We now know the word Ferguson. We also know that Michael Brown and Eric Garner were alive last year, and that Lennon Lacey had just finished playing his junior year of football down at Bladenboro High. And sadly, last year our nation had not been knocked back on its heels by the execution-style killing of 2 police officers up in Brooklyn. But on a happier note, last year, nobody was going to a theater to see a great movie named Selma. Things have changed since last year. And so now I come to ask the question that lies at the heart of this occasion. And that is, what was it about Dr. King that makes the town of Garner and 10,000 other places want to celebrate the birthday of a person who has been dead for 47 years? What was it, and what is it? And I want to suggest 3 things, and then I'm through. That's a good word, isn't it? There was something about the way he was born, something about the way he lived, something about the way he died. He was born on a Moses model. Did you not at your mother's knee learn about a little Hebrew boy, beautiful, tried to hide him in the bulrushes, but he was found and taken up to the Pharaoh's house, and he grew up as the grandson of the great Pharaoh himself. He was born after the Moses model. Dr. King was like that. He was born a black male child in the South, where his folks couldn't vote and his people had to ride in the back of the bus. And yet, as he grew up, people recognized that God had been good to him. In his looks, God had been good to him. In his voice, God had been good to him. In his brain, God had been good to him. At the age of 15, he went out and enrolled in a local college and became a Morehouse band under a great Dr. Benjamin Mays. And then he and Coretta, after college and seminary, moved up to Boston, where she took a job teaching public school, and he enrolled in a doctoral course at Boston and came under the influence of Dr. Howard Thurman, the dean of Marsh Chapel. Dr. King said that every Thursday they had chapel and attendance was just sort of so-so. But as they got close to Thanksgiving, Marsh Chapel began to fill up with standing room only, for nobody wanted to miss the day when Howard Thurman told about how he escaped from the place of his birth. And then the day came when he told it again. Born just outside Daytona Beach. Father died when he was just a boy. He finished a middle school. There was no high school for him to go, was allowed to go. He had a kinsman up the railroad track 70 or 80 miles who said, if you come up here, you can go to high school here and get your room and board if you'll do chores here. And so he found out what the price of a ticket, worked all summer to get $4.50. On the day he was going, his mother lovingly put all his clothing and things in a box, tied it up with string, put it on his shoulder, walked down to the railroad station, and paid his $3.50 to get a ticket. And then he said to the agent, "My box, what about my box?" And the agent said, "I hope I never have to see this man, for what he said disturbs me." He said, "My instructions say that I can put a ticket on the handle of a trunk. You don't have a trunk, and what you do have doesn't have handles. You'll have to pay $1.50 for extra freight." And so young Howard went out on the steps and sat down in the shadows and just started crying. There are times, aren't they, when the only thing we can do is cry. And in the middle of that, he heard a voice saying, "What you crying for, boy?" And he looked up, and there was a man with old faded overalls, rolling a cigarette with a brown faded hat on his head. And Howard Thurman told him, he said, "Come on with me." And he went in and he got out his purse. Some of you are much too young to know about a man's purse, a little pouch. It had a stingy mouth. It wouldn't open so far. You had to reach in and get the quarters out and put it up. And he paid the extra and gave it to the boy. And he said, "That's cheap, boy, to get out of this hellhole," he said. And so he got on the train and he had his little packet beside him and was going out of town, and he saw this man walking up beside the railroad with his old faded overalls and his speckled brown hat he had, rusty look, and the smoke coming out of both sides of his face. And when he passed him, he knocked on the window and waved, but the man neither heard him nor saw him. And the great man at Boston, at Marsh Chapel, would stand there, and the tears would begin to come like love's sweet rain across his face. And he said, "Thanksgiving is coming, and I have an unpayable debt, and I can hardly stand it when I've got a debt to pay that I can't pay." And Martin said every other cheek had tears as well. here was a man who was born on the Moses model with enough handicaps to keep him in the trenches, but enough privileges from the Pharaoh's house to make him soar like an eagle, the way he was born. And there was something about the way he lived. He lived after what I'd call the Gandhi model. Gandhi was the little brown saint from India who stood up to the great British Empire and brought it to its knees. And then he led the masses of the peasants down to the ocean to get salt they could afford without paying tax. Gandhi spoke to those at the top of the world's privilege. He served those at the bottom of the world's need. And Dr. King, did he not do that? If you've seen Selma, you know that he spoke plainly to President Johnson in the White House more than once. He also spoke at the great Riverside Church in New York, where he took a stand, David, against the Vietnam War. And he spoke when he went over to Oslo to receive the Peace Prize. He witnessed to those at the top of the world's power and privileges, but he served those at the bottom of the world's needs. Before he was leaving Atlanta, he said to his family, "Well, I'm going up to Washington and put the finishing touches on the poor people's campaign. But there are some folks in Memphis that have asked me to go, and so I'm going to stop by Memphis on my way to the poor people's campaign." And at Memphis, he never left town until the angels took him. He died advocating that 1,300 garbage collectors would get an honest wage for an honest day's work, serving those at the bottom of the world's need. And so, what I say is, may his tribe increase. Amen.
Thank God for the privilege to be able to come and to lead us in the prayer of peace, justice, and equality after hearing one who has stood for so long on the stage of justice and equality. And certainly the echoes are still vibrant, Dr. Tyson, as you spoke. And we thank you for your words from God. I would ask you, as we prepare to pray, if you're able to grab the hand of the person beside you. Want to touch the flesh tonight as we pray this prayer. Let us pray. Great God, our Father, in whom we live and move and have our being, we come unto you tonight, O God, to say thank you. Thank you, dear Father, for giving us a king. O Lord, he is a king that, according to the 4th chapter of the book of Philippians, we can have through him, as we seek you, a peace that passes all understanding. God, we thank you for a king a king who, by your words in Romans chapter 5, we are told we are justified by faith through him. God, we thank you for a king that so modeled equality in his own life that he said, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear and open it, I will come in unto him, and I will sup with him and he with me. God, thank you so much for our King, King Jesus. And then, oh God, we thank you on this celebration, oh God, for Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Oh Lord, one who sought to follow in the footsteps of Jesus. Even when Jesus said, greater love have no man, that a man will lay down his life for a friend. We thank you, O God, for Martin King and for his desire to see all men and women, regardless of race, creed, or gender, to be lifted up out of whatever it was that was seeking to pull them down. We thank you, O God, for Dr. King, who taught us to dream. We thank you, O God, for Dr. King, who likewise reminded us that we are on a journey to the promised land. He told us that you had allowed him to look over the mountain and see it. And he said, while I will not get there with you, I want you to know today that we as a people will get to the promised land. Dear God, we thank you for his vision. We thank you for all that you put into him that he might pour into us. And tonight at this celebration, we thank you for those who have labored to see that the dream and the vision that you gave him, oh God, that we would one day reach the promised land, causes a Mayor Ronnie Williams to continue to press towards the promise on the journey to the promised land, causes those who would direct us tonight, oh God, in this great program to continue to lead us in the journey to the promised land. God, we thank you that we know that while we may not have gotten there yet, we believe by faith that we are much closer now than we have ever been. And regardless of the events of last year, we know that as we continue to keep our hands in your hands, your unchanging hands, as we continue to remember the dream and the promise and the hope of Martin, as we continue to remember the sacrifice of Jesus, we will get to the promised land. Amen.
The Dymeister singers are going to make their way back up, and we're going to all sing together. Sorry?
It's just me. I'm sorry for the disappointment.
It's just you.
Yes, sir.
She says it's only her. Listen, with your voice and your leadership, it's going to be wonderful. But as we begin to wrap this up, from all that we have heard this afternoon and the way our collective hearts have been touched, this theme of today has been and is and will continue to be a time to be seen, a time to be heard, and a time to serve. May each of us go forth tonight remembering all that we have been given and all that we yet have to give. Amen.
What I want you to do is give David Crabtree a round of applause.
Thank you. All right, you all, we're going to end this celebration the right way. And I will ask that my students absolutely help us by singing out from where they are, but I thought I would just embarrass myself. I was touched to be asked to lead you in the singing of We Shall Overcome, which is such a wonderful piece with a wonderful message. So I will ask in just a moment that you stand with me. I'm just going to try and help you get started a little bit, but I'd much rather hear you sing. So why don't you stand with me? All right. There's been an invitation by Mayor Williams that if you'd like to come on stage and sing, you are absolutely welcome. So feel free to join us. Here we are. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome some. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we will overcome someday. We'll live in peace. We will live in peace. We will live in peace. We will live in peace.